Hey YouTubers, it's Joyful Help Me coming to you. Today I want to show you guys, I've been promising this video to some of you for quite some time now. I want to show you guys how to make homemade bread. I think homemade bread is one of the wisest things that women can take the time to learn to cook. It saves money, and let's be honest, we all know that homemade bread tastes like a billion times better than the 2-day-old stuff we get at the grocery store that's pre-sliced and full of who knows what. So this bread is super awesome, super easy, and only has 4 ingredients: flour, water, yeast, and salt. So let's get going. To those of you who are new to baking bread, make sure that after you buy your yeast, it's stored only in the refrigerator because it is a live product, so you want to make sure it's in the fridge. You're going to need a bowl, a set of measuring cups, set of measuring spoons, a knife for leveling, and then the 4 ingredients mentioned earlier. Now the first thing you want to do is measure out 1.5 cups of flour into your bowl. When you get your first scoop of flour, it's probably going to look something like this. A hole at the back where your thumb was, and overflowing at the top. The way to get the perfect cup of measurement every time is to tap it down, which gets rid of all the air bubbles inside your measuring cup, and then level it off, and then you have a perfect measuring cup. So do that until you have 1.5 cups. Now use the same measuring technique of leveling off to make sure that you have 2 1/4 teaspoons of dry active yeast. Now this is the same amount as 1 packet of dry active yeast or 1 cake of yeast. Now when your yeast and flour are together in your bowl, get your tap running and pour 1 cup of very warm water into the bowl. You don't want it to be hot because that'll kill your yeast, but you do want it to be quite warm. Once you've poured it in there, as you can see that I have, just give it a stir with a fork until you get a nice smooth mixture. Now once it's smooth and good and sticky, just cover it up with a dishcloth and let it sit for 15 minutes. Alrighty, so it's been a little over 15 minutes. As you can see, our dough is kind of like bubbly and looks very different than when we left it. So now comes the part you all knew was coming, the kneading of the bread. But it doesn't have to be as difficult as everybody thinks. But first things first, add 1 teaspoon of salt. Once you've added your teaspoon of salt, make sure you're wearing an apron because this part gets a little bit messy. But don't worry, it's worth the work. So add some flour. I recommend about 1/2 cup into your bowl. Just sprinkle it right over the top. Take your fork and start stirring around your bowl. You'll find the dough follows it. Take your fork and start stirring it around in a circle. You'll find the dough will follow. You see how it's starting to form a lump here? And it'll just pry it all off the sides of your bowl there until you've got one nice big round lump of sticky dough. So take some more flour. Sprinkle it over your surface you're going to work on. I just work on a clean countertop. So just sprinkle a bit of flour on there and empty your bowl onto the flour. You'll probably have some stuck to the bottom. I usually do. I just scrape it out, use your fork. So basically you're going to need to have a little more flour. Sprinkle some flour over your lump that you just poured out. Not too much, just a bit. And just start working it with your hands. Basically how you knead is you just fold the dough in on itself and using the palm of your hand, push it down. So you fold it and you push it. And every time it gets a bit sticky, just add a little bit of flour. Fold and push it down. Work it down. Make sure there's always flour underneath so it doesn't stick up your countertop. See, it's nice and sticky on top here. So we're going to add a little more flour to it. So fold and push. And this is called kneading. So we're just going to do this for anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes. So as you can see, my dough is nice lump right now. It's not sticky. I can touch it no problem, and it's been kneaded for quite a while. So the next step is to add some oil to the bottom of your bowl. I'd add about 2 tablespoons. I don't really measure, I just put a splash in there. So yeah, just put a splash of oil on the bottom. Then what you're going to do is take your dough, the nice side down, Smash it into the oil there. Then turn it over and just roll it around. Make sure all the side is covered with the oil. Make sure all the bread has the oil touching it. And then just cover it back up with that dishcloth. And we're going to wait about an hour and a half. So come back in about 90 minutes. It might be a little bit sooner depending on the temperature of your house. When it's about double the size, then you know it's ready. Okay, my dough is ready. Those holes, don't pay attention to them. I was just having some fun poking them in there. You know your dough is ready when you put a fingerprint in it and the indent stays. So this is nice and big and fluffy. Pour it out on your clean countertop. Cut it in half. I'm just going to use a butter knife so I don't scratch up this counter. Alrighty, before you start pressing it, take a cookie sheet and spray it with some Pam. Then take your 1/2, you know how you just cut it in half? Take the 1/2 and just start mashing it into a rectangle. If you have a rolling pin, that'll work a lot better. But unfortunately, I do not have a rolling pin, so I just kind of mash it. Once you've got the basics of a rectangular shape, take one end and roll it over, pinch it down, roll it over, pinch it down, and just keep rolling it up like a jelly roll. And you're just going to roll it all the way to the top. When you get these end parts, bring them up and pinch them on so you have a nice pinched tightly seam. Make sure your seam is done really tight. Roll it out to be the length, you know, of your cookie sheet. Now put it seam side down on your cookie sheet. Then repeat the process for your other piece of dough. Alright, now we have our 2 loaves here in the pan, seam side down. Take a pastry brush and some oil, and you're going to just brush the tops of the bread with oil. It's a little difficult to do left-handed while videotaping, but I am a multitasker. So once you got the oil brushed over the top, just cover it with a bit of plastic wrap and let it sit for about half an hour until it's doubled in size. Also, depending on how long your oven takes, preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Alrighty, for this next part, you'll need a sharp knife. Make diagonal cuts about every 1.5 inches or so along the bread. This is going to make it look like you really fussed. And it's going to make your bread come out looking like it's store-bought, but tasting the way only homemade bread can taste. And then, take 1 tablespoon of water mixed with an egg white and a pastry brush, and brush the tops of your bread with this mixture. So as you can see, we have the cuts along it. It's all glistening because it's been brushed with that egg white and water mixture. Now we're going to throw them in the oven for probably about 20 to 25 minutes. Okay, I've got them in the oven. It'll probably be a good 20 minutes from now they'll be done. So when it's done cooking, pop it out of the oven. And if you like a crispy crust, transfer it to a wire cooling rack and let it cool completely before wrapping it in plastic wrap. If you like soft crust like me, I like to drape a clean dish towel across it and let it cool a bit, and then while it's still a little bit warm, wrap it in plastic wrap. When you go to eat it later, you'll have a nice soft crust that's easy to cut through. So that's how you make homemade house bread. Even though it took a long time to rise, we actually only did about 12 minutes of work today. For 12 minutes of work, I would really rather have fresh homemade bread than go all the way to the store and get it. Seems about the same amount of work to me. So let me know what you guys think of the recipe. Email me questions and comments and videos you want to see. This is Joyful Helpmeet. God bless.